Think about the last time someone asked you how you were doing. Not a close friend, a colleague maybe, an acquaintance, someone at a family gathering. And think about what you said. You probably said, fine, good, busy, but good. You smiled maybe, you moved on. Now think about whether that was actually true. For most people, it was not entirely true, and yet it felt completely natural to say it, almost automatic, because somewhere along the way, you learned that certain feelings are not for public display, that certain truths are better kept quiet, that the version of yourself you show the world needs to be a little more composed, a little more acceptable, a little more manageable than the one that actually lives inside you. That is not dishonesty, that is the mask, and almost every human being on earth wears one. The question worth asking is not whether you wear a mask. The question is why, and what it is protecting, and what it might be costing you. Carl Jung called this the persona. He borrowed the word from the ancient Greek theatre, where actors wore literal masks to signal which character they were playing. Jung used it to describe the social face we construct over time, the version of ourselves we present to the world in order to function, to be accepted, to survive the complexity of living among other people. The persona is not inherently a problem. Jung understood that. We need social roles. We need to be able to shift our tone depending on context. The way you speak to your employer is not the same way you speak to your closest friend, and that is not deception. That is social intelligence. The problem, Jung observed, begins when a person loses the distinction between the mask and the self, when the role becomes the identity. When someone has worn the mask for so long, the mask becomes the person. One, or the cheerful one, or the selfless one, for so long that they genuinely cannot remember what they feel when no one is watching. That is when the mask stops being a tool and starts being a trap. So where does the mask come from? In most cases, it begins early. Children are extraordinarily perceptive. They notice very quickly which parts of themselves are welcomed and which parts create discomfort in the people around them.
The child who cries too much and is told to toughen up learns that vulnerability is dangerous. The child who is only praised when they achieve learns that their worth is conditional on performance. The child who grows up in an unpredictable environment learns that being small, agreeable, and invisible is the safest way to move through the world. None of this is a conscious decision. It is adaptation. It is survival. The mask is built piece by piece, year by year, out of the very reasonable conclusion that the real self is somehow too much, or not enough, or simply not safe to show. Nietzsche wrote that the most common form of human cowardice is the refusal to know oneself. That sounds harsh at first, but look at it more carefully. He was not condemning people. He was pointing at something real, that self-knowledge requires a kind of courage, because what you find when you look honestly at yourself is not always comfortable. And so many people choose the mask not out of malice, but out of a very understandable fear of what they might discover underneath it. People-pleasing is one of the most recognizable masks in modern life. On the surface, it looks like kindness. It looks like generosity and flexibility and warmth. And sometimes it genuinely is those things. But often, underneath people-pleasing, there is a quiet terror, disapproval, a terror of conflict, a terror that if you say what you actually think or ask for what you actually need, the people around you will leave or withdraw or decide you are too difficult to love. The people-pleaser does not wear their mask because they are weak. They wear it because at some point, softening themselves felt like the only way to stay safe in a relationship. The mask worked, and so it stayed. There is also the mask of strength. The person who never admits they are struggling, who handles everything, helps everyone, and appears completely unshakable. This mask is often worn by people who were never given permission to be fragile, who learned, perhaps from a parent who needed them to be strong, or from a culture that equated vulnerability with failure, that falling apart was simply not an option. So they do not fall apart. They perform solidity, and they do it so well that the people closest to them often have no idea how much weight they are carrying. Dale Carnegie understood something important about human interaction, that people are driven far more by emotion and the need for recognition than they are by logic. What he perhaps did not say loudly enough is that this need for recognition is often what drives the mask in the first place. We perform the version of ourselves we believe will be recognized, valued, and kept.
We shape ourselves to the audience because we have learned, consciously or not, that the unedited version of us might not be enough. And here is where it becomes genuinely important to pay attention. Not just to your own masks, but to the masks of the people around you. When someone is performing arrogance, one possible reason is that they are managing a deep well of insecurity. When someone is relentlessly cheerful, they may be working very hard not to feel something they are afraid of. When someone is cold and distant, they may not be indifferent. They may simply have learned that closeness leads to pain. This does not mean you excuse harmful behavior. It does not mean you stay in situations that damage you. But it does mean that understanding the mask can shift the way you respond to people. Instead of reacting to the surface, you begin to sense what might be underneath it. That is not naivety. That is emotional intelligence. And it changes everything about how you move through the world. The deeper question, of course, is what to do with your own mask. Jung did not suggest that the persona should be destroyed. He suggested that it should be understood, that you should know you are wearing it, know why you are wearing it, and know that it is not the whole of who you are. The goal is not to perform your raw, unfiltered self in every situation. That would be its own kind of problem. The goal is to have a self that exists beneath the performance, a self you can return to, a self you recognize. That process begins with small moments of honesty. Noticing when you say fine and mean something else entirely. Noticing when you agree with something you do not actually agree with. Noticing when you shrink yourself to make someone else more comfortable. Not to judge yourself for it, but to see it, to know it is happening. Because the mask only has power over you when you forget you are wearing it. There is something quietly profound in the idea that the people who seem the most put together are often the ones working the hardest to hold a particular image in place. And the people who seem the most open, the most willing to say, I don't know, or I am struggling, or I was wrong. Often the ones who have done the harder work. The work of learning that they do not need the mask to be worthy of being here. You do not have to perform yourself into being loved.
You do not have to be the strong one, or the easy one, or the one who never needs anything.
Those are roles. They are not you. The real you, uncertain sometimes, complicated sometimes, tired sometimes, is not a problem to be managed. It is a person to be known. If this video gave you something to think about, consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you want to keep exploring the deeper patterns of human behavior, Inside the Labyrinth is here every week. And if this spoke to a part of you that rarely gets heard, stay with that feeling for a moment. You are not broken because you feel deeply. You are only beginning to understand yourself. Subscribe to Inside the Labyrinth for more reflections on the hidden patterns of the human mind.